Okay, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Good morning, everyone. It is finally not 1,000 degrees outside, and I am happy. We're getting there to actual fall weather, which doesn't exist in Texas, but we can have wishful thinking, right? Okay. So today is the last class to cover the 5 hindrances that we've been covering for the past couple of months. So the 5 hindrances, if you are unfamiliar with, I would highly suggest that you go back to our videos on YouTube and watch the previous classes for the first 4 hindrances. And so the 5 hindrances is a quick summary, because we're already at the end, are the 5 main obstacles that we have during meditation. So the 5 hindrances are desire, ill will or anger, sloth or laziness or sleepiness, restlessness, and then today we're going to cover doubt. So these are the 5 hindrances. These are the obstacles that typically arise in our mind as we meditate, especially for new meditators, or if you haven't meditated for very long. These are typically one or more of them will come up during your practice, right? And these are the obstacles that hold us back from having a fruitful and successful meditation session. So definitely go back and rewatch the previous videos if you haven't attended those classes, or if you need a refresher, definitely do, because during our meditation retreat in December, which is December 11, we have a meditation retreat, a one-day retreat, so it's going to be from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then our main practice for this retreat is going to be concentrating on the 5 hindrances and enhancing our awareness of those hindrances in our practice, meditation practice. Leon, can you turn that down? Thank you. So today we're going to cover doubt, the 5th and last of the hindrance. Unlike the previous hindrances, which, I say that they're anger and sloth and torpor, restlessness, these sound pretty basic. All the hindrances are pretty basic, because they are. But the first 4 are a little bit more, can go a little bit more deeper spiritually, because we have spiritual obstacles to overcome for those hindrances. But for doubt, on the other hand, doubt is pretty basic. There's not too much spiritual description for it, so it's pretty straightforward. And so when we go over doubt and we think of what doubt is, ooh, can you let the cat out? Thank you. You can just push her out, she's fine. Thank you. I'm going to pause until everyone sits. Okay. So I'm not going to repeat what I just said, but continue on to doubt. So doubt, from a very mundane point of view in the description, is just an ability to make a decision, right? We always doubt things. We doubt things on a daily basis. We doubt which turn we want to take, right? If there's traffic on the way, we doubt if we want to take this exit or if we want to suck it up and continue onto the traffic road. And then we think about, well, if we take the exit, is it going to be backed up on this way because all the people are getting out the exit, or if we stay here, is going to be longer race? We're always doubting things. We're doubting what we want to do, we doubt what we want to eat, what we want to wear, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So doubt is constantly there, but we don't really call it doubt, right? We're just saying, oh, we're thinking it through. But there's a difference between thinking it through and actual doubt, right? Because doubt can hold you back. Can hold you back from making decisions, can hold you back from making mistakes, right? And part of our fear of doubt is the fear of failure, right? So if we're doubting something and we kind of go with one decision and it fails or doesn't go our way, now we're kind of suffering because we're like, oh man, I made the wrong decision. But like we always say, in success, you have to fail first, right? Otherwise, how are you going to succeed? How are you going to learn if you don't fail? So failure is not a bad thing necessarily, right? It's nothing that we want to go through, obviously. Nobody wants to intentionally fail. But failure is an odd necessity in life in order to really learn and grow and develop your thinking process, your thought process. But as we sit in meditation, doubt arises in many different ways, and we hear it almost every class when those that are new, ask questions. And the questions are always like, I don't know what I'm doing, or I don't know if what I'm doing is correct, that I'm thinking too much. What do I do? How do I stop it? Et cetera, right? All these are doubts. You're doubting your ability to meditate. You're doubting your knowledge of meditation. You're doubting that what you're doing is correct or incorrect, right? And so these are the obstacles that are holding you back from truly having a successful session from meditation. So asking questions, again, is not wrong. You definitely do want to ask questions. You want to question what you're doing, especially if you're trying a specific meditation method. Sometimes questioning the method itself is good, because if the method is not working for you, then you want to be able to at least try a different method or experiment with a different meditation method, because there's dozens, if not hundreds, of different methods and techniques you can use during meditation to help you with that concentration and with that focus. The last series of our classes, last year before, we went over at least a dozen different methods and techniques for meditation, right? I gave you a handful of different breathing meditation techniques. We went over walking meditation, chanting meditation, visualization meditation. We went through the whole works, right? Not because these are the best ones or these are the most correct or accurate, but to give you options, right? Because one method could work for you really well and another one could do nothing for you, right? My method of meditation could be too complex for someone else, or vice versa. So if you're meditating, and I advise to stick to one specific method for at least a week to even up to a month, right? Because you're working out your mind, right? You're reprogramming your mind when it comes to meditation. So you're teaching it how to do something new, right? Which is meditation. You're teaching it to focus on your meditation object. You're teaching it to not engage in distractions, to not engage with external things that are happening, like sounds or smell or whatever it may be, right? So if you try a meditation method for just 1 day, 2 days, and it's not working for you, well, it's not because of the method, but it's because you're doubting the method and you're not allowing it to actually do something for you, right? So with the dozen of meditation methods that we've covered here, always stick to one for at least a good amount of time, right? If after a week or two or a month you feel like it's really not helping you much or doing anything, then move on to a different method, right? But you have to allow your mind and your body to relearn a new technique, right? Because our mind is chaotic. Our doubting mind always jumps from one thing to another, right? Do I turn here? Do I turn there? Do I want to eat this? Do I want to eat that? Do I want to wear this? Do I want to wear that? Do I like him? Do I like her? Et cetera, right? You're always doubting things in your mind. So as we sit and as we work through our practice, it's okay to question things, right? It's okay to question the method. It's okay to question what's going on in your mind. Because the Buddha is pretty famous for saying, just because a teacher, a high-ranking teacher or high-ranking sage, including myself, him, the Buddha, says something, you don't have to believe it. You only believe it when you put it into practice and it works for you. So if you practice it and you see that it develops compassion, that it develops peace and freedom, then it's a good teaching. If that's the opposite and it's bringing you suffering, it's bringing you desire or anger, then it's not a good teaching, right? You are the deciding judge here. So I can teach you something that may or may not make sense to you, and may or may not be totally accurate or true, but it's your job to go and test it out, right? I'm giving you all these options for you to go test out. I'm not giving you these options because I'm saying these are the best ones. I'm giving you the options that I feel, I'm giving you some of the options to allow you to experiment with them and see which ones work for you best, right? Because I can't go in there and hold your mind and hold it down and say, you need to stop thinking too much. You need to start doing what I want you to do, right? I can't do that for you. But you can. But it takes practice, obviously. So don't think that just because you're questioning what you're doing in meditation, it means that you're doing something wrong, right? The point of meditation, ultimately, is to develop concentration, right? A misconception that I always say that people think of meditation is to sit and not think, right? They think that's the goal of meditation. And they always come up to me and say, I just can't stop thinking. And I'm like, who told you to stop thinking? I didn't tell you to stop thinking. That's not the point of meditation. The point of meditation is to know that you're thinking. It's to be aware that you're thinking. To be mindful that there are thoughts arising as you meditate. And these are the thoughts that are distracting you and holding you back from realization, from awakening, from enlightenment, right? So we hear the word mindfulness all the time. It's scattered through every Buddhist textbook and resource, almost, right? And it's there because that is mindfulness. Awareness is the technique that we use for pretty much any practice in Buddhism. When we learn something new, typically the correct way to analyze it is to contemplate that teaching through meditation, right? So now your meditation object when you meditate is to analyze that thinking, the teaching. So if you just read about the Four Noble Truths, or you just read about some other Buddhist teaching, right? The correct way to analyze, to contemplate that, is to do it through meditation, so that you can dissect the teaching. You can pull into pieces, and you can find the truth behind that teaching, right? Because if you just read it at face value, you're either going to believe it or you don't believe it. And then you end up not even applying it to your life. So what was the point of reading it? Because Buddhism is a mind-centered religion, right? We're not praying to the Buddha or to the Bodhisattvas, to the saints for help or guidance or health and wealth. They don't care about that. These are plastic. They're not even here. What's the point of praying to them? They're not going to come and bless you or anything, right? It's all mind-centered. And that was the emphasis during the Buddha's time, right? Is that true happiness comes from yourself, not from external objects, not from external things. Someone can't make you happy. They can bring you happiness, but how long is that happiness going to last? Maybe for the duration of the relationship, the duration for your life, but after that it ends, right? And so happiness is impermanent. And that's a big part of the five hindrances as well, is all these hindrances, all these obstacles that arise during meditation are also impermanent, right? They won't last forever. They only last for as long as they are showing themselves as we meditate. So when we feel doubt in our practice, then, or any of the hindrances, right? The antidote to any of these hindrances, especially doubt, is mindfulness. To be aware that, hey, this is doubt. I'm doubting myself. I'm doubting the practice. I'm doubting the method, right? And it's okay to question it, but it's easier to question it after the session. Because at that point, you've completed the meditation session, right? You have observed your mind, you observed your body, you observed how you reacted, how you thought, how you handled situations as they arose. And so at the end of the session, then you can start questioning the method. You can start questioning if I was sitting comfortable enough, if I was in a quiet enough area, was I breathing too hard, was I breathing too shallow, was I breathing blah, 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 right? You start asking questions but after it, not during it. Because during it, what you want to do is to just be present, just be there, watch what's happening. Don't judge it, you don't have to condemn the practice, you have to condemn yourself. You really have to be compassionate toward yourself and say, I'm thinking, right? And so for these past sessions, especially during the five hindrances, the meditation object that I tell you to do while you meditate is to label, right? So as you're thinking, or not thinking, as you meditate and you're sitting there, right, typically the main object of meditation or the main method of practice is to follow our breath or to count our breath, right? So as you breathe in and you breathe out, you count 1, in, out 2, in, out 3, up until 10. And you can either start over at 1 or reverse the ordering from 10 to 1. And in the middle of any of that, if you get distracted or if you lose count, you simply just reset and go back to 1, right? That's the meditation, that's the method of meditation. But then as you meditate, if something arose, like a thought, and you get distracted, or you hear a sound, or you smell something, or you're feeling pain or whatever, the object now is to label it, right? So what we typically do is if we're sitting and we hear a door open, then we're thinking, who opened the door? Who are they? Are they a new person? Are they a member? Are they tall? Are they short? Are they going to make a lot of noise, right? We start questioning the sound. Really, it's just a sound. There's no story behind it, but we are giving it a story, and that's the problem that we typically do. So by labeling things, as the door opens and we hear that sound, we just label it sound or door. Whatever comes up first, just label it. Don't give it a story. Don't entertain it. Just say it as it is, sound. If you're feeling hungry, right, because now by the time we're done, it's almost lunchtime. So if you're feeling hunger, you're not thinking, oh, where am I going to go after this? Do I want to go home and cook? Do I want to eat out somewhere? Do I have all the ingredients I need? Am I feeling like mimosas or coffee? I don't know. It's a Saturday. Why not both, right? But we're giving it a story to what is just hunger. That's the label, hunger, or food, whatever you want to call it. Don't give it a story. But that storytelling is something that we do often, right? We do that when we're driving. And I tell this example all the time. If someone cuts you off, what do we do typically? We cuss them out. We flip them off. Maybe we go and try to cut them off too, right? But any of this does is, what does it do? Really, nothing. If you do attempt to cut them off, you may cause an accident. You may hurt yourself. You may hurt other people. You may kill someone for all you know, right? So instead of creating this whole story about how dare they cut me off, I'm more important than they are, or where I'm going is more important than where they're going, blah, blah, blah. Instead of creating all that false storytelling in our mind, just accept what happened. Label it. Someone cut me off. That's it. Continue your defensive driving. Don't drive recklessly. Don't kill somebody, right? So that happens throughout our day, all day, every day, right? And because we do this, this creates false perceptions in our mind. This creates these false stories that we create and we tell ourselves, right? And so if we started something new, for instance, right? We started a new job or a new employee joined our team. We typically try to prejudge the new job or prejudge the new person before we even met them, before we even started, right? And so if a new person does show up, then from afar you see your manager introducing them to everybody else, and you're already judging them. I don't like what they're wearing. I don't like their hair like that. I don't like the way they're standing. They talk funny. They look funny, right? We're already judging this person before we even know them, right? So you're already creating this false perception in your mind. And so sometimes we hang on to that perception so hard that even if they end up being a very nice person and very hardworking, right? But because we already prejudged them in our mind, saying that they're not worth it, they're wasting time, they don't know what they're doing, it's hard to change our mind, our perception of that, even after they've shown us differently, right? So if we're able to stop that kind of habit thinking and false perception ahead of time, then it's easier for us to accept things and to allow things just to happen. Because that way we don't have any perceptions that are going to give us disappointment, right? Because if we create a pre-story for something or someone and it doesn't end up being the way that we want it or how we want it or as much as we wanted, then we become almost disappointed because it doesn't meet up to our expectations. And those expectations is what causes our mind to start creating things and go into crazy land. Right? But expectation is very important. Not important that you have to have expectations, but that you don't have any expectations. Because that's also part of our practice is, and in doubt especially, because if you create an expectation of what meditation should be, and you sit down to meditate and it doesn't end up being how you thought it would be, then you're going to be disappointed. You're going to be discouraged. You're not going to want to meditate again, right? Because now you're thinking, what's the point? If I'm not doing it right and I can't do it, then why am I doing it in the first place? Why am I wasting time, right? But that type of discouragement, that type of expectation that we create is going to create a bad practice, right? So as long as you're able to let go of expectation, let go of this doubt that you can't do it or you don't know how to do it or it's not working or whatever it may be, if you let that go and just be, then it's easier for those experiences to actually develop naturally and skillfully and correctly. Because meditation, like working out, takes time. You can't go to a gym one time and all of a sudden you're a bodybuilder, right? It takes years almost. It takes time, it takes effort. And so we have to do the same thing with our mind. We have to work out our mind. We can't just meditate one time and all of a sudden we're Zen masters. If that were the case, then the whole world would be at peace. Right? But it's not. So we have to allow yourself to fail. You have to allow yourself to learn. Allow yourself to have those ups and downs in meditation practice, because those are necessary. Because otherwise, you're going to sit and you're just going to start daydreaming. Oh, it's so quiet in here. What do I want to have for lunch? Do I need anything from the grocery store? What's tomorrow? Is Monday a holiday? Right, you start daydreaming about random crap. It has nothing to do with meditation. So what are you sitting for? If you're just going to sit and daydream, what are you sitting for? Right? Don't create a criteria for success in meditation. Because that's something that a lot of new people to meditation do. They create this predisposition criteria of what a successful meditation is. And so when they sit and meditate and it doesn't happen, then they're like, well, it's not for me. It didn't work. Right? And we don't want to do that, because it will work. You just have to give it time. You have to put in the effort. You have to put in the diligence in actual meditation. You don't have to sit for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a day in meditation. You can sit for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It's the quality over quantity when it comes to meditation. Because if you have quality 5 minutes of clear-mindedness, it's better than sitting for an hour and being distracted the whole time. Right? You can attest to Cynthia. She gives us all sorts of crazy stories when she's out talking to people and people being rude to her, and she's like, hey, girl, I'm zoned out. What you're doing is not influence me whatsoever. And that's true. Why? Because she, even though she may not be aware and mindful at the very second that something negative or discouraging happens, but eventually her practice comes up and it reminds her to think, hey, just calm down, take a breath, and assess what's going on. Listen, right? Part of our habit as humans when we're in an argument is that we don't listen. We automatically try to retaliate. We automatically try to defend ourselves. We automatically try to make us seem like we're the right person, or we're in the right and they're in the wrong, right? But if we just sit and listen, we can listen that they are also suffering. If they're yelling at us for something, whether it's something legitimate or non-legitimate, if they're yelling or if they're in a bad mood or whatever it may be, it's because they are suffering. And so when we sit in meditation and we are able to recognize and realize and be aware that we are suffering, this is why we're meditating, then we become compassionate for ourselves, right? We know that these hindrances cause suffering in our meditation practice. We know that these hindrances cause suffering in our everyday life if we're able to take it from meditation to everyday life. And so knowing that we, as normal people, suffer, and we become compassionate for ourselves, then we can extend that compassion to other people, because they too are suffering. They too are going through all these hindrances, right? So you're no better than they are, and they're no better than you. We're all interrelated. We're all humans. We all are family in some way, shape, or form, right? Okay, I went off topic as usual. But other than being mindful, right, as the antidote, we also have to be mindful during our doubts or during any of the hindrances. Another thing that develops after we practice for a while is faith. Faith in our practice. Faith in what we're doing is actually doing something, right? Like I said, it's not going to take a day. It may take a week, a month, a year even, for you to really see things change or happen. But more often than not, very small, subtle things change in you that other people see first, right? Because we know who we are, right? We see our growth every day, sort of, right? But we don't really see it. We're just kind of going with the flow because it's our mind, it's our body, right? But other people see that growth and change in you first, which is probably better anyway, right? If you were to, after high school and you meet up with, as a reunion 5-10 years later, you may not seem that you've grown and changed, but other people definitely see it, right? They'll see that you've aged 5-10 years, or that you've changed physically or mentally, right? So meditation does create very small, subtle changes in you, which is good, because over time they'll just get bigger and better, right? And so over time you'll see the changes in you, but definitely other people will see those first, which is probably better. It's easier to accept what you're doing, right? Because sometimes other people are like, oh, they'll mention the changes that they see in you, right? Like the last class, Cynthia told her story about the mean mask lady or whatever. She'll tell you a story later. But the person she was speaking to saw that she was the calm one in this, not really argument, but it kind of was an argument kind of a situation. And because of that, she was able to accept that, hey, I'm doing this right? I'm not retaliating. I'm not yelling back at this lady who's being rude to me. I'm not being rude back, right? Because that's not how things work. You can't fight anger with anger or hate with hate. You just create more anger, you create more hate. Sure, go for it.
But she then bowed and she said, thank you, and she bowed back, and that was the end of that. So it was, I feel kind of like it was really more refreshing for her. I remember kind of like her faith and practice, because we do forget, it's a busy world. But what I was proud of myself was that I was able to, one, not take so pleasantly, two, just recognize that she was having a bad day, and then just leave it there, because it doesn't exhaust you through life. You know what I mean? You give everything a story, it exhausts you. By the time you're done, oh, this person did this to me on purpose, and I know they did. That person doesn't even realize they did it to you. Because you were rude to someone else 10 minutes ago, and you didn't realize you were rude to them. So it just, meditation does do that. So it's just a practice so you can take it into the world, and it makes your life better. Because you don't have to worry about every little thing. You just can't. It's too much.
Right. Thank you for sharing the story. Again.
I was happy, and I think it helped her too. You know what I mean? I think it helped her with, because if she's coming from a country that practices Buddhism, it's engraved in her, just like I grew up Catholic. It's engraved in me. It's something since I was little. But you forget these lessons or these things, and you know. And I know we recognize, like you were saying, that everyone has pain. Other person is suffering too. You know, that we'll show more compassion. And then guess what? Some people show us more compassion.
Right.
Well, really aggressive.
Right. You fought hostility with compassion and kindness, and then you changed her aggression to kindness.
Earlier that day, I had forgotten my compassion, and my thing was someone reminded me of it. So that person felt me kind of straight, so I was in a better frame of mind, and then when I encountered her, I was in a better frame of mind to deal with the situation. Which I didn't really think was a situation. I was perfectly willing to walk away, but it just kind of evolved.
Right. Yes, thank you. Okay, I'm almost off talking time. But yes, to Cynthia's story, right? And the same thing that happens in any situation, right? A lot of times if we're doing the driving piece, like going to work in the morning and someone cuts us off, and if you allow that to carry you on into being in a bad mood because you're thinking, how dare they cut me off? I'm trying to go to work, they're bad drivers, and now you're in a bad mood. So you go to work and you're in a bad mood and someone's trying to say hi to you, and you either ignore them or you're being rude back, right? So now you're creating this other person and giving them a bad day, and you just create this domino effect of giving people bad days, right? But if you just stop that negative thinking when it arose in the first place, then you have nothing to spread. You have no anger to spread out later on. Right. Yeah. So,
Can I just have one thing? So you just reminded me, so when I told that lady thank you and I did that to her, that was me not doubting my practice and not giving her stories. So that was,
there you go.
that's
See, it works. Right. Right. She was doubting because she was like, how dare you bow at me? But you just accepted it and let it go. And that's kind of the point of our practice. And that's where you can take meditation from the cushion into your everyday life, right? So that way when you're driving, when you're walking somewhere, when you're interacting with people, you have mindfulness on your mind, right? It's hard to be mindful 24/7, obviously, but if you're able to at least be mindful in the smaller things you do in life, like walking to the car, or getting ready in the morning, or brushing your teeth, or eating, right? Or doing laundry or dishes, right? And just the small things that you do routinely, if you're able to be mindful of what you're doing and how you're doing it and how it feels, then it's easier to be mindful during bigger things in life, like being in an argument, right? Or being in a potential fight or something, where you can be mindful of like, hey, this is a bad situation or a negative situation. Let me stop my thinking. Let me stop my bad thinking. Because what happens is if you're in an argument, we're going to try to retaliate, is typically what people do, right? And everything starts as a thought first, right? You're thinking, you're analyzing how dare they say this, or you're thinking of a comeback, or you think of something else, right? But if you're able to stop that at that point, then it doesn't turn into speech, right? Now you can stop yourself from saying bad things, saying things that you may regret later, right? Saying things that may hurt people's feelings, or being judgmental, whatever. If you're able to stop at that point, right, if you couldn't stop at the thought process, try to stop at the speech process. If you can't stop at the speech, what happens is now you're creating action, right? So if you're in an argument, you may now start a fight. You may be physical. You may do something wrong or bad. You may do something you may regret, right? So everything starts on our mind as a thought. So if you're able to stop the thought, then you can stop things from escalating to being bad speech or being bad action, right? And so, that's off topic again, but for the next 3 classes before, oh my goodness, we have 3 more classes before our retreat. So the next 3 classes, now that we're done with the 5 hindrances, we're going to go over 3 of the main meditation methods and techniques. So the next class, we're going to cover a couple of methods for breathing meditation. The class after that, we'll do walking meditation, and then the 3rd class, we'll do chanting meditation or mantra meditation. So to me, those are the 3 most effective and easier methods to do for meditation. So if you join us for those classes, at least they'll give you some methods for you to try out and experiment with, right? Because like I said, if one method doesn't work for you, then you need to find something else that does, right? But in most cases, our doubt is simply it's really just a reflexive sign of our impatience, because we're in a society where we want things next day shipping almost, right? So we want immediate results, and so when we meditate and we don't have those immediate results, we automatically assume that we're not doing it right, or it's wrong, or it's not for us, right? But you have to give yourself that time to develop that. You have to give yourself patience to create a correct practice in order to see the results. Cynthia didn't meditate for one day and all of a sudden she's this happy go-getter person that lets things go. No, she's been my student for 3 years now. So it took her 3 years to develop that practice. So don't think it's not working. It's working very subtly, right? Because she didn't have to be like, hey, let me be mindful. It just habitually came out. She habitually said thank you. She didn't have to think first, right? I think, hopefully it's the case. I don't know. I'm assuming. And that's where the mindfulness happens too. Mindfulness is anything. Mindfulness isn't meditation. It's the walking to your car, right?
Not that anybody ever does that, but if you did, you start breathing, doing the one, just breathe, and then your mind will come back to it, and you're actually able to listen to it.
Yes.
And then just don't call them back.
And then there's an old Chinese saying that says, to understand the nature of water, look at the waves, right? And so in the essence of the Five Hindrances, desire is a wave. Anger is a wave. Restlessness is a wave. Laziness is a wave. Doubt is also a wave, right? These are waves in our mind. These are, to look at them, we're not looking at the things that cause the anger, right? If someone hits you, we typically think, why did they hit me? How did they hit me? Right? Instead of just acknowledging that I've been hit, I have pain, right? We're making a story for the other person, right? But it's really our mind that it's creating that judgment, that's creating that story. So even though things externally happen to us, it's our mind that makes up that judgment, that perception, that idea. So if we're able to simmer down those waves in our mind, then we have that calm, cool ocean water, right? But it takes time, obviously, right? Some waves are higher than others. Sometimes we have more stress than other days. Sometimes we're angrier than other days. Sometimes we're happier, right? So our waves in our mind go up and down all the time. But when we're able to practice meditation, practice mindfulness, and see and be aware and acknowledge those waves and acknowledge what they are, right? By giving them that label and seeing their true essence, right? As anger, or as doubt, or as sound, or whatever it may be, right? In a way, you can also start creating this trend chart in your mind, right? This habit. Start creating a trend in your mind to see what arises most often, right? And when you create that trend and you see this particular thing always comes up, or it's the most dominant in my mind, right? Then now you have something to tackle. Now you have something to be able to actually do something about, right? Sometimes it's a person that causes us a lot of anger or distress in life, right? So maybe we have to unfriend them, maybe we have to distance ourselves from them, maybe it's our job, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's whatever it may be. It can be a plethora of things, it doesn't matter. But when you create that trend to see what arises most often, now you have something to be able to take care of. And so if you're able to take care of it and release yourself from that, now your mind is more free. So now it won't come up as often, right? So now you're creating smaller and smaller distractions in the mind, and you're creating a stronger and stronger practice. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking. Because you know me, I can go on and on and on. But as difficult and challenging as some of these hindrances are, they do create a or they give you the ability to truly understand how our mind works, right? Because that's also one of the goals of meditation, is to see how our mind works, see how our thinking works, right? We may think that we're total saints in life, right? And we're not, obviously. But when you're able to sit and meditate and you watch your thinking and you see the thoughts that arise, right, and you recognize them as bad thoughts or negative thoughts or hateful thoughts or being judgmental or biased, now you can say, oh wait, maybe I'm not so saintly after all, right? And now you see how. Now you see how you truly are able to tackle those things and eliminate some of those things from your life and from your mind. So you're able to actually practice and be more free, be more open, more accepting. Okay. Now I officially will stop talking. So before we have some time to meditate. But before I do that, any questions, concerns, emotional outbursts? Yes, sir.
When we meditate, you mentioned we have our thoughts, and we just kind of acknowledge our thoughts that we have, try to deny or something, right? But do we kind of sort of detach ourselves from our thoughts? Because I know like sometimes we kind of get attached to them. And once we get attached to them, they kind of, balloon out of control and takes us somewhere else. But is it fair to say to sort of detach ourselves from our thoughts as we meditate or try to meditate?
It's not necessarily detaching, right? Because attachment is part of the first hindrance of desire, right? So typically we're attached to things because we have desire for whatever we're thinking of, typically, right? And so detachment is denial, really. If we try to detach from something if we're trying to detach from a specific thought or distraction that arose, then we're denying and we're pushing back what our mind is trying to reveal to us, right? So we don't want to necessarily push anything back. We don't want to deny anything. You want to be able to allow yourself to be open and accepting, to see what it is, right? So that you can understand why that thought is there in the first place, right? If you're able to understand why it's there, then you don't have to detach from it. You have an understanding of why it's there, what it's doing, what it's trying to tell you, in a way, right? So, if we're able to be open with whatever comes in our mind as we're meditating, if we're able to be open for it, accept it, see it for what it truly is, then we don't have to block it out, right? Because if we block it out, it's still there. You haven't gotten rid of it. You haven't accepted it. It's still there. So that means it has the potential to come back. And we don't want that, right? So if you're able to let it be, allow it to be there, be open to it, see it for what it really is, now you have an understanding of why it arose in the first place. You have an understanding of why it's there. You have an understanding of what it's trying to reveal to you. And if you're able to do that, then you have no reason to have to detach from it. You have no reason to block it out. Because detachment is just another word for blocking. You're blocking what's trying to happen. You're not accepting it, right? And we do that in life all the time, right? We're in a situation like, oh, I'll deal with it later, or I don't care about that. That's not accepting it. You're not allowing it to happen. You're just pushing it off to the side, but it's still there. It's still going to come back to you, right?
kind of makes it know it better. But what confused me was like, okay, well, if I label it and I ignore it, or then, I'm not feeling good, it's a little confusing. But the labeling is just during meditation so that you can keep doing your practice of meditating.
Right.
But you don't want to ignore the overall subject because obviously it's something that's affecting your life. Then you want to do it.
Right.
Or don't want to do it, whichever decision you make.
Right. Because like I said earlier, you ask the questions after the practice. You don't ask the questions during the meditation, because you're trying to do something during meditation, right? You're not questioning what's happening, but you label it to kind of say, hey, this is what arose, and so that afterward, if you want to, you can discover or go into a little bit more deeper into it. But for the most part, as things come up, you want to be open and allow it to be there. Accept it, see what it's there for, accept it for what it is, and then it'll naturally go away, right? It came up because the conditions in our life allow that situation to come up, right? If the situations in life or the conditions in life never happened, then whatever arose would have never arose either, right? So everything's a cause and condition. Everything's karma in a way. But again, don't block them. Just accept it, and then learn from it, understand it, and then it'll naturally reveal itself. Or whatever happens. I don't know what will happen, how your thought process will work, but the point is to not block it, not detach from it, because it's still sitting there. It's not going away. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, we will do, I talked a lot, so we'll just do 10 minutes of meditation today. And then after that, if anybody came up with any more questions or wanted to share anything, we'll do that. So the point of today's meditation, as usual, is just to do the counting if you want, or just be observant of how you're breathing, right? So we can pick a specific point in body where you can feel the sensation of breathing pretty strongly, either at the tip of your nose as you feel the air enter and exit, or in your chest area as the chest expands and contracts as you're breathing, or if you want to count the breath, do whatever it is, and then just make those labels, right, as things arise. And if anything does arise that it's doubt, label as doubt. Or if you've been to, or have watched any of our previous classes, label any of the other hindrances that arose too. That way you can see which ones come up most often and create a little notebook for it later. Anyway, okay. Well, I'm going to go sit over there, ring the bell, and we will sit for 10 minutes. Feel free to adjust yourselves, stretch out if you need to. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Welcome back, everyone. That wasn't too bad, right? See, if you can only do that every day, then who knows? You may become a Zen master by the end of the year. Okay, any final questions, comments, experiences? Yes, ma'am.
So I'm still having difficulty with the whole positioning thing. Because, like, for example, right now, my leg was going to sleep, so I put this on. And this happens when I practice too. So I know that ideally we want to do this, but I know that we can also, whatever's comfortable for you, right, where you're not falling asleep. And, where you're not falling asleep, you're able to practice. But at the same time, I've also read other instructions that say you should power through it and try to get the positioning and so forth and so on, because that's part of it. So, but it does hinder me because I feel like I have to reboot every time I have to shift, and I'm sitting there thinking okay, it hurts, I'm labeling it, but it's not allowing me necessarily to. So, what do you think? Which school of thought is better? Should I just completely be comfortable to start off with, so I don't come up with those things? Or do you power through it? Or is it stages?
It's the middle path of that, because you know me, I've said it before, you need to suck it up. Your legs are falling asleep. Yes, Leon. I'll answer your question, hold on. Yes, Leon.
I think there's a lot of difference too between pain and suffering.
Right.
Which is what we're trying to get at with Buddhism. So, we feel the pain, our legs falling asleep, we feel our backs hurting. We tend to make a lot more emotional deal about it, just complaining to ourselves about how bad I feel.
Mm-hmm.
So, the art is very difficult. Is to, just like with everything, disengage from telling a story about the pain, send your awareness to it, and quite often I find it softens it right away. It's not as intense, because if the pain is there, it's triggering us to do a mental thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
We're not in the pain anymore, we're all in our mind, right? So I think that's helpful.
To be aware of it, to power through.
Because it would take just as much effort to let it go as for me to make it that whole story and suffer through it.
Well, it takes more effort to story tell versus to let go. Right. Because in traditional...
Because I even go to I can't believe I have to address this. I'm going to have to break my meditation when I already broke it because I'm already up to it.
In traditional Zen, for instance, in Zen scripture, it's very specific in saying you have to sit in lotus position, right? There's scriptures where it says you have to sit in lotus position. But that's very specific to that tradition. But the Buddha was like, I don't care how you sit, right? You're not taming your body, you're taming your mind, right? This isn't yoga. So it doesn't matter how complex or simple your posture is. You're not meditating for your body, you're meditating for your mind, right? But the posture is important because at the same time, you have to be centered enough and comfortable enough to be able to meditate, right? One thing about these cushions is that they're kind of terrible. They're not technically for sitting long periods, right? For the most part, I think Leon is sitting on a blue cushion. So that is something that's thick and heavy, right? That typically goes on top of these smaller ones.
And this goes on top, and what that does is help you get your hips a little bit higher than your knees, right?
Right, because you want your hips at the level of your knees, if not higher, to create that triangle foundation. Right. So because we don't sit too long for these classes or services, power through it. But for our retreat, I'm going to get the thicker seats because we'll be sitting from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Not the entire time, of course, but the majority of the day we'll be sitting for long periods, so you need to have that stability. But even at home, you may have to layer cushions or sit at the edge of a cushion so that your butt is a little bit at knee level, right? So you create that triangular foundation where you're stable. You're not shifting too much. You're not putting too much pressure on your knees or your ankles. It does get easier over time because, like working out, when you work out at the gym, you're literally tearing muscle, right? And you're rebuilding muscle on top of it. So there's pain there, obviously. And so the pain that you feel in your knees or your joints or falling asleep is part of that training too. And you get used to it over time. Because in Western societies, we don't sit on the floor very often, unless we're in kindergarten, right? But after that, how often do you sit on the floor? You don't. So your body isn't trained to handle that stress of sitting for long periods. So you have to really train yourself to get back into that zone. My legs still fall asleep too. It's not that it doesn't happen, it's that when it does happen, you know how to handle it, right? Acknowledge that it's there, and it's okay to adjust yourself, but again, you be mindful. You make the label moving or adjusting or lifting or correcting, right? That's still part of meditation. That's still part of the practice. You're not disconnecting or finishing a meditation and starting over again. Because being mindful of the sensations, being mindful of your movement, your adjustments is still part of the practice. Right. Right. You're putting too much emphasis on pain when it's just pain, right? And like Leon said, once you acknowledge that there's pain there, it'll be like, your leg's like, oh, fine, whatever then. I'll just move along, right? Because it's trying to distract you. It's trying to push you off the path. But once you bring light to it and accept it and let it and be open to it, then it'll subside. It may not go away, but it'll subside enough for you to continue on. Or to adjust yourself. There's no problem in adjusting. Just do it mindfully. Right.
Suffering is what your mind does with it after it gets that signal.
Right.
I'll tell you one challenge with reading this really interesting is it's kind of along the same mode as pain is a severe itch. So I'll get itchy sometimes. And you'll be sitting there and everything's fine, all of a sudden there's just one spot on the cheek or somewhere, it just like crazy. And so I find that it's a little easier to deal with than pain. It's the same kind of thing. So I use that as an experiment to say, okay, it's going on.
But that's also nerves, right? That's a brain function. So you can literally tell your brain to stop the itch.
Or if you just wait, it goes away.
Right. Or just tell your brain to stop the itch. Because I do that all the time. Stop itching. Stop itching. Stop itching. Stop itching. Alrighty then. Well, we've completed the 5 hindrances, so I hope that if you've have come along with us through this journey of the 5 hindrances, that you are able to apply that not only in meditation practice but outside of meditation. If you haven't been along with us, please do watch the previous classes. Everything's on our YouTube, I'm sure. And if you do plan to attend our retreat, that knowledge of the 5 hindrances is going to be very beneficial for you, because the theme of the retreat is to develop concentration through mindfulness, but the theme teaching is going to be the 5 hindrances. So definitely study upon that if you are attending, and I do encourage you to attend. We have to limit the spaces because it's being filled up pretty often. So I think there's like 6 spaces left. But again, that's on Saturday, December 11, and it'll be from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. You can find the schedule for that day on any of the events pages we have, either on our website or on Facebook. That way you have an idea of what's going to happen. The longest sitting session is only 45 minutes of meditation, which isn't that bad, but it's much easier when we're meditating together in a group. Time does fly by. Cynthia's been here, Leon's been through it, so they can share their experiences from the retreat, but it's very enlightening, I think. So if you're able to join us, you do have to register, though, to attend. So the registration link is on our website or through Facebook. Whatever outlet you go to, you'll find a link to complete the registration. But you have to do that to attend. So that's Saturday, December 11. Okay. Our next class will be whatever the fourth Saturday of the month is, the 23rd. So the 23rd we'll cover for the next 3 classes, as I mentioned, we'll cover 3 methods of meditation. So the next class will cover 3 techniques of breathing meditation. And then we'll cover walking meditation and then chanting or mantra meditation for the 3rd class to prep, because we'll use all those methods during our retreat. So just wanted to give, because we've already covered those methods, but this is a quick refresher to prep us. Okay. Yes, which is ending. The next class, there's only 2 more classes for the Buddhism 101 for the year, so we'll start again next year, hopefully at the temple, because it's been virtual all year, depending on COVID. But there's 2 more classes of Buddhism 101. That's every Tuesday at 6:30. And then, of course, every Sunday at 12:30 is our Sunday service, where we do the Dharma talk and chanting. Okay. Well, if you have any questions or any concerns or anything like that, feel free to flag us down after I get up. All right, thank you, everyone. Namo Shakyamuni Buddham.